So good day, everybody. We're here at the next exciting installment of the Business Boost Academy podcast. And today I'm really excited to tell you that I'm actually talking to somebody who started off as a client of mine a number of years ago, and then actually has turned into one of my closest friends as well. And I'm really, really proud to invite Anthony Nichols from the Next Level onto the podcast and see how this goes. So Anthony, how are you doing this afternoon, mate? Are you good?
Awesome, mate. As I was saying to you a minute ago, I haven't had a shave, but I've had a shower. So, it's a good Friday.
Well, that's all right then. That's all right. So I'm just glad we don't have smell-o-vision, because otherwise you'd smell like a
Or the
Lynx
scratch and
aftershave
sniff,
or something.
scratch and sniff
Scratch and sniff.
podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So Anthony,
Yeah.
obviously I know a little bit about you and your career and everything else and where you've been, but you you're somebody who's done what a lot of people aspire to do in building a really, really good business and then ultimately selling that business. Um, what I'm really interested in is, and what the people watching this will probably be interested in, is how you ended up starting your own business in the first place. So could you give us a bit of background?
How far back do you want me to go? Teenage years?
No, I don't need to go
20s?
back that far. No, we haven't got all
My
day.
first real job? No, no, well, about 25 years ago, I was given an opportunity to essentially become a rookie QS, a quantity surveyor in the construction industry. And it was working with my stepdad, who who has been QS all his life, and he was given an opportunity to work on a project, which was a 5-year project, big, massive project. It was eventually it sold for the highest amount of money ever for a private residence in the UK. I was on that for 5 years, and it
Wow.
was yeah, it was a quite a welcome into the construction industry because normally you build up to those sorts of ones, and that was my classroom essentially.
Everywhere is down
So
after that, then basically.
yeah, it kind of is, but it doesn't have to set your standards really early
Yeah.
on. You're not building up to standards. It's just that's what it is. That's how we present ourselves. That's how we are in the meetings. That's the information that's required. And the first couple of years can be a bit rough because you're just trying to up your game because you haven't got the skill set or the knowledge to be at that level.
Mhm.
But you sink or swim, don't you? So it was a good learning ground for me.
Yeah.
And then I was around 10 years working with Clive, my stepdad, and that particular company. Another local smaller business, family business called Bosch's. They were around 20 million turnover, something like that at the time, doing some
Mhm.
nice, really nice country house estates in Oxfordshire. Um, the projects I was doing initially with the other client sort of took me into London. I wasn't particularly enjoying work in London. So I did some more work with Bosch's, and my wife and I uh, moved house, had a starting a family, and then got a call on a Friday to say Bosch's were in administration, and that was the end of that. And
Wow.
I was a freelance, and so invoices were unpaid. It was you know administrators are in there, and I'm bottom of the pile.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's a tricky position to be in. So I rang somebody, a guy called John, who worked at Bosch's, who I got on well with, and said, I think he asked me the question of what should we do now, and I said, well, I might as well start a business, mate, completely out of the blue. And it was through necessity more than anything else, and that's what we did. Um, One of the former directors at Bosch's got wind of what we were doing, a guy called Tom, and he asked to be a part of it. So the three of us, the H and the N and the B, Hodgie Nichols and Bosch's, that's what it was. We set up the business, and that was around a year and a half. And Tom wasn't enjoying it, so Tom stepped away. And John and I picked it up as H&B2, as we come to know it as.
Mhm.
And uh, then followed about 8 years of hard work.
Yeah,
Trying to
absolutely.
work out how to be a business owner because you know your
Yeah.
skill set from before, and you learn how to run a business as you go, don't you?
So when you first on day one, HMB1, day one, you sit
Mm.
in there, what went through your mind?
Day one,
Yeah, day one, when you sat there and you sat there in front of your computer,
uh,
what went
mate,
through your mind?
well, we set our stall out actually. I think it was more led by me that I didn't want us to be a general builder,
Mhm.
and that was kind of the theme all the way through. And that came from the years of working in what was pretty much the billionaire market. That's what it
Mhm.
was that we were in. You're never going to set a business up to be in a billionaire market. It doesn't mean you can't set your stall out to be in a millionaire market.
Yeah,
So first thing I did, to answer your question, was I opened up Microsoft Word and I typed in HMB in Times Roman numeral in capitals and put it in red, and that was my logo. So
right.
that's, for all the creatives out there, the marketing whiz kids, that's how I I did the logo, and we ran with that for about 2 years. But we did that, and then the next thing is, well, we need some clients. So John went out and visited every single client that he'd ever worked with, and met them personally. And I reached out to a couple of clients where I was QSing on projects, and just said, "Look, we're setting up a business." And we'd started some of these as Boschers. They obviously needed their project finished.
Yeah,
So would they be interested in having a conversation about us as our new business finishing the project? So the number one was find some work,
yeah,
because you start with a pot of money, and that pot of money disappears really quickly. And
it does. Yeah.
so yeah, so our first, I know again you build up to these things. Our first contract was worth 335 grand or something like that. And I remember we were awarded it before we'd even set up the business with Company's House. We didn't have a bank account. It was a take a chance meeting, you know,
Yeah,
create the chance and take the chance.
yeah.
Um,
It's
yeah,
unbelievable, isn't it? The number of people who go through that whole process, and I hear it all the time about people, I've got to get myself a website sorted. I've got to get myself this. I've got to do this. I've got to make sure all my paperwork's in place. I've got to, and actually, really, what you need is sales, and the rest can follow.
yeah. The other stuff is important, of course it is, but it's not as important as going out there and getting the work. It never has
Mm.
been. Um, because as you say, without the work, what are you? You're
Yeah.
just a shiny website and a name. You need to have something more than that, and that's what brings in the money.
Hmm.
So no, but the website did follow. Again, I think it cost me about 200 quid, and it was a sort of a day jobby, and that was the website for a couple of years. And this go back to sort of growth. That did us fine. I think in our first year we were around £1 million our first
Wow.
year. And then in our second year, and this was our downfall, really, it was something we didn't really understand in business. I think we cleared 4 million quid in our second year.
Crikey.
Yeah. So that's why the crack showed, because you make all the wrong decisions. You're trying to understand and run a business. You have all this business work coming in, and the reality is you're still an absolute novice.
Yeah, yeah.
You
It's
understand
like,
construction and how to build houses for people or refurb them or extend them. You know all that, but the running the business side of it, you're a novice, and all of a sudden there's a novice in charge of a 4 million plus business. Quite
I think
frightening
the
when you
thing
think
is,
about it like that.
people don't realize, do they, that when you're actually building a business, you've got to build a firm foundation in the same way that you do in a house. You've got to build a firm foundation, otherwise the wall's going to fall down. And it's the same with the business. You've got to build a firm foundation for a business, because if you grow the business too quickly and it's not got that firm foundation, then you're going to put yourself into some kind of problems, which obviously is what happened in year two for HMB. So
You know, it is, we grew too quickly,
yeah.
but we realised that when it was probably too late, because we were on projects and we were losing a fortune on some of them. So we were busy and it was growing, but again, it does mean nothing if you're not making money as well.
Mhm.
So it's
Did
yeah,
you did
some
you do
hard
you
lessons.
with on reflection, when you look back, obviously that was a number of years ago now, when you look back, do you feel that it was because you didn't have control of your finances at that point, or was it just the fact that you just grew too quickly and your finances were running out of running
No,
away with
the finances were fine. It was a naivety on our part. So, and it was a naivety on the projects that we were picking up, and going for and signing contracts for.
Yeah.
There's one we go, yeah. Well, now it's a big part of what I do, and it was a big part of H&B's success in the final few years. It was about gut instinct and picking your clients and whatnot. And
Mhm.
there was one particular project where it was a lovely project, one of those ones that look lovely on the website and all the rest of it. And we went into it thinking that it was going to be a bit tight on money. It was a what was it? A little over £300,000 contract, and we lost nearly £300,000 in year two on that one project.
Wow. Okay.
In year two,
Yeah.
and when we go back, the warning signals were there because we never should have worked with that particular client.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
The trouble was we learned that one too late because we already made that same decision with a couple of other clients who gave us that same feeling. But in construction, you're in, especially large projects, 12, 18-month programs,
Mhm.
and then 12 months defects are 2.5 year relationships. So it's a lesson we learned, but that we also then couldn't get out of other
Yeah.
ones. So there was a couple of other projects. It sounds like I ran a really unprofitable and unsuccessful business, but there's a couple of other projects that also lost significant money, six
Mhm.
figures. The one thing, and I have no idea quite how we achieved it, but every single year of the business, we made a profit
Mhm.
every year, even with that year two 300 grand loss. So we did
So
something right.
what was the catalyst then behind Tom stepping away? What was it the stress and the pressure and everything else, and he just didn't want to be involved with that, or what was the catalyst there?
It was um, what was the catalyst? He he just said it became a negative figure in the business, and that spread from the H&B office, the H&B team, to the subcontractors and the suppliers. And he wasn't enjoying it, and unfortunately that spread to other people,
Yeah.
and it wasn't having a good effect on the business in the slightest.
Mm.
So yeah, no, he stepped away and he did something that made him happy. He went off and invested and bought a landscaping business and went and sat on, the old powered lawnmowers going around cutting grass. But that for
Yeah.
him, that was perfect. And
Yeah.
um, and John and I, after sort of, having a bit of a reflection, we decided we wanted to do things differently because we scaled it too quickly without even knowing we were scaling it quickly, and we wanted to do it differently second time round. So that's what we
Yeah.
did.
So when Tom left, he'd taken himself out of the business and everything else.
Mm.
Sounds like from his own mental perspective, it was probably a good thing for him to leave from things that you say. But when he left, there's you and John left there. Um, so what structure did you start the business with? How did the structure look of the business? Because I know you ultimately changed it, but what happened there?
Well, at that point,
Yeah.
we massively wound it back. So we got rid of the office. We got rid of the office staff. Um, it was a complete step back and go, we made a mistake here. So yeah, we then ran HMB without an office, and it was just myself and John, as in doing everything that it takes to run a business. And again, I think I talk turnover because it makes it easier for people to realise where we're at. And at that point, I think we scaled it back to around something like 2.5 million quid. So we were doing 2.5 million quid of work, me and John with no office. Crazy when you think about it. But it's
Yeah.
not crazy. So I also know I was sat in this exact room, slightly different position. I also know what it took to be able to do that in
Mhm.
terms of the hours that it took, because then you get rid of all of your office staff and you even that reducing the turnover, you still have to then adopt all of the tasks that need to be done. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a step back, but more work, if that makes sense.
So if you take that first sort of 2, 3 year period,
Mm,
what would you have done knowing what you know now? What would you have done differently if you, because obviously you're now coaching people in business. If
mm,
you were looking at yourself 8, 10 years ago, what would
mm.
you what sage advice would you have given yourself at that particular period of time?
The business on my own.
Do the business on your own. Okay.
Because I yeah, I would have liked to have just been responsible for myself
Hmm.
rather than having a sense of responsibility for absolutely everybody.
Yeah.
So it's something that it's quite a relief now doing what I'm doing coaching wise because it is me. I feel a sense of responsibility for the people I'm coaching, and you kind of you know adopt their business in a sense in terms of you care about it and you care about what happens to them. But there is a detachment still, unlike when it's your own business and your own people
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah.
So
You do have an overwhelming sense of responsibility for your staff and everything else that you're doing. And that's really hard. And I don't think people actually appreciate until you're running a business or you're at the top of a tree of a business and you've got salaries that you need to pay, knowing those salaries are paying people's mortgages and everything else, you do take that personally. And I don't think people see that.
it's that whole thing. So anybody that's starting up their own business to start with, they will have that thought process of, I'm setting this up and I'm at risk. I've got to pay my bills. I've got to earn money to pay my bills. As soon as you take on an employee or, two or three employees, your mindset completely shifts to, I have to make sure we're earning money and success with the business so I can pay their bills, and you pay yourself last.
Mhm.
You're bottom of the pile.
Yeah.
It's quite a transition. And, again, going back to when we first set up, we didn't pay ourselves for the first 3 months. We didn't pay ourselves anything.
Mhm.
And then there were periods where we didn't pay ourselves, especially when we were in the growth periods. We didn't pay ourselves
Mhm.
because we needed that money in there for cash flow. We caught it up, but that's the sacrifices that you need to make. And that's what you don't realize when you set up a business.
No,
It's
no,
you
you don't.
you take it from going, hope I earn enough money to pay my bills and keep a roof over my head, to I'm going to do this so I can support everybody else and make sure the roof's over their head.
Yeah.
And the business is not cash rich, but cash flowing properly. And you put yourself to the bottom of the pile. So I think, again, go back to your question, the one thing I would have changed, or if ever I were to start a business that is more than just one person, it's I'd go in it alone, but I would be very, very, very mindful of how and when I bring people on, because
Yeah.
that's a lot. It's a lot of stress, a lot of worry.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
so you're in HMB2 now, and you and John are running the business. And I obviously came on board in lockdown. I think it was when we started working when I started working with you. What would you, and at that point, I think there were three of you in the business. There was you, yourself, you, John, and Julie. Um, what would you say the game changer was? What was the point when the business really, the penny dropped or something happened and the business really started to scale? What would you say is probably the biggest game changer?
I think, COVID's quite a unique time, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, it
Incredibly,
was.
incredibly unique. And, at that time, and this is how we know each other through BNI, I was
Mhm.
chairing the BNI meetings, online. And you're just talking, and so many people's businesses, they couldn't operate, and there's a lot of worried people. And I was sat there with my construction business being allowed to operate.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean it was easy to operate and function properly, but we could. And I, yeah, rather than seeing COVID and that exact period of time as a time to wind everything back and get to panic stations, it was a case of, no, it's just double down. Let's work twice as hard as I've ever worked, and this isn't going to ruin us.
Mhm.
And I think it was a bit more of a, not necessarily a mindset shift. Maybe it was a little bit, but it was just going up a gear in the business. That's not to say we were coasting before by any means, but it was definitely felt responsible for everybody. It's one thing I'm incredibly proud of is the fact that during COVID, every single person was paid. We didn't lay anybody off. Everyone had their salary. The guys on site we opened up the sites, and yeah, we stayed functioning. But in that time, during that COVID year, our turnover went up and our profit went up
Mhm.
at a time when, other people's wasn't. And I think that was down purely to the fact that it was a determined thought to say, no, this isn't gonna put us under. So yeah, it was a knuckling down. And there's another moment, if you skip forward a couple of years to probably 3 years ago, where I wasn't overly happy in the business.
Mhm.
And I think this was when John and I first had an initial conversation about thinking about selling the business. And it wasn't at the level that we would have been happy with in terms of sale price. And so I went on a little bit of a mission to scale the business. Um, and that's what we did.
I remember that time really clearly, and I remember that conversation as well. With three of us were sat in the room, and um, it was, what do you want? And that was kind of the question that was thrown into the middle of the room. And when we sat down and we looked at the numbers, it was, well, you're not there yet. So what are we going to do about it? And it was a really pivotal moment, I think, in that whole HMB journey. Um, and actually, it was seeing the both of you on the same page, actually knowing what you wanted to do, and I think it did make a difference. Um, so when you get,
It did make a difference because at that point there was a shift, if you like, in the to enable me to grow the business. I had to step away from everything operational.
yeah,
John had to take on. He was already doing an awful lot of it, but it was almost that is your world now, John. There
yeah,
you go. That is you. And if we're gonna effectively, we were talking about doubling it and doubling it. Our turnover in the business, which
which you did.
yeah, which we did, and coming still, and yeah, going back that time, that was still a bit of COVID around.
Yeah, there was
There's
still a bit of
still,
COVID around. Yeah.
but it was the impact of the COVID because
Mhm.
we were dealing with something that was unprecedented, which was the price increases.
Mhm.
And that was, in terms of materials and labour and whatnot. You talk about cost of living crisis, which was also thrown into the mix as well. That, for some reason, at that point, that was one of our times where we were going absolutely all for it.
And
So yeah.
that's another really interesting point, because again, um, for those people that are watching this, your business was located right on the doorstep of HS2, which, for those of you that may or may not know, HS2 is high-speed rail link that goes between London and Birmingham, and it literally cuts straight through the countryside and the part of the countryside that we were living. Um, and it's those external factors that you had no control over. So I remember
Mm.
getting materials was really, concrete was a difficult thing to get hold of, wasn't it? It was very,
It's whether it was available or just the price increases,
yeah.
because the nature of our business was that we were on fixed term contracts. And so when we were at a point where the builders merchants, and anyone in construction world will know this as well, where you would get a quote from them, you accept it, and you pay it, and that's what you'd pay at the end. Well, that wasn't happening in the end. It was whatever the price was at that point when it was delivered to your site was the price you were paying.
Mhm.
So we almost didn't have a choice in what we were paying for the materials, let alone the scarcity of it. It was a case of, well, we need the materials obviously to keep functioning and working, and so it would land on our on our site, and the price might have gone up 30, 40, 50%
Mhm.
in a in the space of a month, maybe.
Mhm.
Especially timber. Timber was going
Timber was
up
ridiculous, wasn't it?
probably. I think it went up something like 300% at one point over a
Yeah.
few months. And obviously, you need timber for building. So, managing with all of those price increases on fixed price contracts, and this is something I'm ridiculously proud of, and still for the every year being profitable is probably one of my biggest achievements, I'd say, personal achievements in running a business.
Mhm.
So yeah,
I
yeah,
think the resilience you both showed at that time as well was incredible, because at no time did I ever hear you turn around and throw your hands up in the air and go, "Oh, fuck this, why are we doing this? This is just shit. There was never any of that reaction at all. It was all very much a case of, right, okay, this is what's happening. This is how we're going to deal with, how we're going to work our way around the problem.
I
And
remember this chat as well that we had, Steve, and it was one where there wasn't much work in the order book coming up, and your advice to us was to reduce overheads, if you recall.
I don't know if I do. Yeah, okay, I'll take
It
that.
was.
Yeah.
But it was reduce your overheads, cut your cloth accordingly.
Hmm.
And whether this is good sound advice or not to other people that are listening, I ignored that and doubled down and thought, no, sod that.
Mm.
We're not going to wind it back. You know, we've got good people in here that do a good job. It's taken a long time to put these people in place and all the rest of it. And we're going to go out and get the work that we need.
Mm.
And it was, and I was talking to a client about this just this week, and that belief that an accumulation of just doing the right thing all of the time will bear results.
Mm.
You don't, it's not guaranteed, of course it's not, but just doing the right thing all the time, continuously over time, it will bring in our case, projects to do. And
Yeah.
so it's just that belief that just keep doing that and keep doing it more, and don't take don't take a step back. And
So that's really
thankfully that
interesting.
that worked for us. But it's something that I do believe in. That
Yeah. It's
back in
really interesting
yourself.
that you say that because when you're talking about that, my philosophy is reduce your risk in a situation like that. So I would have seen the high overheads as a risk, whereas obviously you saw the actually you've built your team up to a point where you've got a great team of people. And let's face it, at that particular time in the business, you had an amazing team of very, very skilled tradespeople working for you by that point. And I know how difficult it was to build that up, but you saw a greater risk letting those people go than actually retaining them and trying to continue to grow. And that's,
So if you were to, and it's something that I teach people now, coach people now about overheads, about good and bad overheads.
mm,
And it's a real simple exercise to do. List out all your overheads, and if they make you money, contribute to making you money, it's a good one.
mhm,
If they don't, it's a bad one.
mhm,
And anything in the bad side, get rid of. And that
yeah,
sounds really brutal, but if it's vehicles, if it's people, or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. If it's a bad overhead losing your money, get rid of it.
yeah,
And I didn't necessarily do that exercise, but when I looked at the overheads that we had, the people in there and the overheads that we had were right. They were good overheads.
mm,
So to reduce something that was good, probably in my, you know, funny way of thinking, was riskier.
mm.
So actually keeping them probably had less risk in my logic.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I think that's probably the case. That that's why I say, you saw getting rid of those people as a greater risk than actually, sorry, keeping those people, sorry, getting rid of those people as a greater risk than keeping them. Oh, my brain's, you can tell it's a Friday afternoon, can't you? And it's that's the thing. Now, you did a lot of different stuff with HMB. You were I I've cited you to a number of people that I talk to, through the clients of mine and people that we both know or whatever. And one of the things that I've sometimes said to people is you're probably one of the most creative thinkers in terms of the stuff that you do, and particularly with the marketing side of things. So you had some pretty cool ideas with the way you marketed HMB. What would you say was your most successful marketing idea, and what would you say was your biggest disappointment in terms of it didn't work the way you hoped it would?
it's start with a disappointment. It's easy. It's when we signed up for SWM,
Yeah.
and it's no fault of theirs. It's the fault of mine. It's at my map, and I remember it cost us something like, I think with them and a new website and all this, around 50 grand, maybe more, 60 grand possibly. But no, when we were going through that idea that we wanted to scale the business up, and we were looking at where our clients were, And our clients are private clients. They're in very small communities, and putting a Google ads out isn't an option for this this particular type of business. That's not where they're going to come from. And putting an ad in the local magazine, or it's just not, that's not how it worked. And so it was the idea about how do you tap into very closed and small communities where, and we did for many, many years, we won projects off of word of mouth. And then we stayed in those small communities for a long, long time. So how do you break into new communities was the question we're asking. And um, one way that and also expand. And one way we thought was to advertise ourselves with a magazine called SWM, Sports World Magazine. And this was targeting, it sounds very stereotypical to say targeting the sports persons, the sports people of the world. It wasn't, we weren't targeting sports people, we were targeting the community that they had, if that makes sense, because they are very close knit and actually very private. And we saw their, very honestly, we saw their black book of all of their contacts, which was ridiculous, by the way, as a way of expanding HMB. And so we created a sub brand called HMB Exclusive, changed it to black and gold, and signed up for a year with those guys. And we got some inquiries in, and it soon dawned on us that they weren't inquiries. We were never going to be the best fit for doing the projects,
Mm.
which at that point, that was our mindset. If we weren't the best fit, we wouldn't do it. If we didn't want to work with a particular client, we didn't.
Mm.
And when we were then going, I was going off up and down the country having a look at these projects, we were never going to be the best fit for them. So
Mm.
that dawned on us probably about halfway through, I think, and probably also that we shouldn't have changed the branding. We should just stuck with what we were,
Yeah.
which I think actually held more weight than the new brand we created, trying to attract or fit in, if you like, with um with the other companies that were in the magazine at the time. And all we did by doing that was we did fit in and we didn't stand out.
Yeah.
What we should have done is stand out.
Stand out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a really,
So
really important lesson. But the thing is, the thinking behind going into SWM was sound. The logic behind it was sound, and it wasn't until it didn't necessarily work. Is there anything do you think you could have done more in due diligence to have prevented that happening that would have changed your mind? Or do you think it was very much a case of, this is the way we're going to go forwards. I can see this is the right thing for us to do.
I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change anything in what we did.
Mm.
And with SWM, you learn a lesson, don't you?
Mhm.
And I remember us committing to it and spending all that money. And then I also remember myself taking my foot off the gas because in my mind, that was going to be the thing that was going to drive the business forward.
Right.
And the lesson again that I took away from there is that it's what grew our business was building relationships. And if I wasn't out doing that, and building relationships is not a 5 minutes thing, then I think a little bit of HMB was lost in that period, and what we stood for and what we did. So once we realized that, that's when we really doubled down, and it was pretty much all about building relationships and good ones. And
Mhm.
I said to you all the time about the win-win relationships,
Mhm.
the ones where you enjoy spending time with people. You're not there because you think at the end of it you might get a project out of it and grow your business or whatever. It's not. That was never it. It was always find nice, positive, genuine, happy people. You enjoy their company, and at some point, I might be able to help them, and at some point, they might be able to help me with saying, "Have a chat to Bob or Sally or whoever it is." And that's really how we set up HMB and grew it. And that was my lesson off the back of SWM to
Mhm.
do that more and enjoy doing it as well.
Yeah. So
That's
it's
that's the biggest lesson, if you like.
yeah, and it was
Biggest
a
mistake, biggest lesson.
yeah. I think often the way those mistakes that you make are the biggest lessons that you can take from it. I often say to people, if you know, when you make a mistake, if you don't learn from it, then there's you're going to make the same mistake again. And I always say idiots make the same mistake twice because you have to learn from those mistakes. And it was very true.
Yeah.
So
Just a
when
second though. Steve, hold on a second, because you know these podcasts. I've got my 7-year-old in Sky. You all right, mate?
yeah,
The plug for your tablet. It's in the playroom, darling, in the drawer at the top. All right.
Love it. Um, she got it.
Go on, mate. She'll come back with another problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, so you've gone through that and you've built the business up. What was your biggest win? What
What was
what
my
what when you were running HMB, at what point, what gave you the biggest satisfaction, the biggest win? Not necessarily a contract or anything like that. It might be a contract, but what to you gave you the biggest sense of satisfaction?
seeing how some of the team progressed?
Mm.
And when especially some of the younger members of the team, would tell you that they've gone off and bought their first house, or they're going on holiday abroad for the first time. Or I remember one lad, he was just spot on, and he'd let us know that he went out and he started off as a labourer, and he was absolutely buzzing when he bought himself some new tools. And I love that. I look at that and think, going back to what we're talking about, having a business and feeling responsible for them to have a roof over their, but it also, they're especially again the younger guys and girls that were in our team, seeing them being able to progress in life. That's yeah, I love that,
Mm.
and becoming more confident and knowledgeable in the job. But just seeing what working with us afforded them to do
Mm.
was really cool. So yeah, aside from all the nice big project wins and turnover and awards and all the rest of it, I'd say that's my number one, mate.
Yeah, and the one thing I would agree with that, because the one thing I would say as well is the culture you had within the business was always brilliant. And I used to love going in and working with you because it was a happy place, generally speaking, to go. And the environment was a good environment. And that's another important thing, I think. If you're scaling a business and you're growing a business, you have to have the right culture because everybody was with you and John on what you guys were trying to do. I mean, obviously they didn't realize at the time that you were building, scaling the business with the purpose of selling it, but they were all fully engaged, and it's because you had this culture that started at the top and then fed its way down. Um,
I think
so
the bit about building and scaling it to sell, I think it was that, but there was also times when we were talking, it was giving us an option to sell, if that makes sense.
yes, yeah,
Because we were also saying, if we grew it and it became something different, because it gave us an option to step back to sell. At the time when we first had that conversation 3 odd years ago, there was no option.
hmm,
The only option was to stay in the business and keep
yeah,
going.
absolutely, yeah, it was, yeah,
So it was, I think having options also helped,
yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
So
Sorry, mate.
moving forwards, right? We've sold HMB. Everything's good in the hood. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing now, mate,
What am I doing now, mate?
and what's your motivation behind it?
Do you know what? It's really simple, and it is ridiculously simple. I I was I volunteered to coach preteens, kids, and give them career coaching advice. And it's around COVID time actually. It's during COVID, and these are disadvantaged kids. And I'd always talk to them about passion, finding your passion. You might have it now, you might have in 10 years. Don't force it; it'll come to you. But when it does come to you, follow it, and embrace it. And mine, probably, I don't know, a couple of years ago now, and I was thinking, what's my passion? I didn't know what it was. And it took a while, actually. Again, not trying to force it, it took a while. And I realized that my passion was helping people, and it always has. And I grew to love business. You said when you start, you don't understand it, you haven't got a clue, and you're learning. Well, actually, once it all started to click into place, I actually really enjoyed it, that side of it and the dynamics of it. And only yeah, when I set up the next level, it was off the back of that. It was helping people in business. But in the short space of time that I've set it up, so we're now what, 2.5 months in,
Mhm.
and having conversations with quite a few people about it and finding my way with the new business and how I want to approach it, I've actually learned something else about myself. And that is that, as somebody describes me, as an inspirational coach, which makes me ridiculously uncomfortable even now saying it. It does, honestly.
Yeah.
But it's something that I'm stepping into, that uncomfortableness, because then when I, let it marinate in my head for a little while, I actually realized that it does make me uncomfortable because I know that's what I can do and have done just naturally. And it's something that I tended to have shied away from. And there was a reason why I tended to shy away from doing it, was because I held it negatively and I didn't want to encourage people only for, to then let them down. Whereas, my mindset has shifted even in this short space of time,
Mhm.
that it's not that. I'm giving them the tools and the mindset and the headspace and whatnot to succeed rather than to fail. So yeah, when you talk about the next level, helping people, enjoying business and inspiring.
Mhm. I'm going to make you feel more uncomfortable. So,
Not then.
um, why is it that you think that individual described you as an inspirational person?
Pretty much told him as what we've just said here for the last however long it's been. Because we were having what's it been? Half hour, 40 minutes?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I pretty much spoke as I've spoken now. And probably the additional 5 minutes of that chat was me talking about the next level, and not, I wouldn't, and I still don't describe myself as a business coach. I don't, even though that's what I do for people clearly, because I saw my approach as being different. And I see an awful lot of value in being comfortable with yourself and your feelings, and the feelings not just of the owner of the business, but the feelings of the team.
Mhm.
And I probably hold more importance on that than strategy, in a funny way. And, this particular person who I won't name on here, but he sort of challenged me and said, well, how do you approach it with the people you're talking to, and the team? You said you talk to the team, and it's that. It's my question is always, and I always lead with it, is how do you want to feel in a couple of years? And not, for me, that's more important than saying what turnover do you want in a couple of years? Where do you want your business to be in a couple of years? How much profit do you want in a couple of years? Do you want to double your team in a couple of years? For me, that's fine, but how do you want to feel in a couple of years? And for the most part, especially because this is talking to business people, business owners, they want to feel proud and
Mhm.
they want to feel a sense of success. And the biggest one is they want to feel happy.
Yeah.
They actually want to enjoy their business. And my next question is always, how do you feel now,
Mhm.
at this exact moment in time? And it's the opposite of those, really. And for me, and this is when I was saying to the guy when he described me as, you're an inspirational coach. My goal when I'm coaching is to get people from the feeling they've got today to where they want to feel in 2 years' time. And amongst all of that, there's ties into the business, of course. But when we were talking yesterday about the why,
Mhm. Yes, we were. Yeah.
and for me, and I know there's a lot of people in the old TikTok land and all the rest of it that talk about the why and whatnot. Why are you doing it? Why? But the more powerful the why, the more dedicated and consistent you're going to be in achieving it. And I just think that the why for your business. So when we talk about where do you want your business to be in a couple of years? Sorry, where do you want it to be? I want it to be here. Well, that's fine. But when you start talking about where do you want to be feeling personally, that's way more powerful. And when you then bring that into the team as well, and you get them on that same journey, that is a big enough why, in my opinion, to produce way, way better results than just focusing on a SWOT analysis.
Yeah,
You know,
I totally agree with you.
and
When I
forward projections and let's grow 50% and let's increase market. That's fine, but
What's the purpose behind doing that?
go back to the why. And if the why is personal rather than business, the why is going to be big enough. And if the why is big enough, you're gonna achieve it. So
I've said this
again, I said
before.
that to him, and that's where he said, "Well, you're an inspirational coach," and I was went, "Ah."
I,
But
I've said
it's
it
true.
before
But
that,
that's
yeah,
true.
I
That's,
think
that's it.
it's very much that case that your business is a vehicle for your life, not the other way around. And actually, if your purpose is strong enough, you'll achieve it. And when I look back on all of the clients that I've had really good successes with over the years, and there's been quite a few of them, but the clients that I've had really good success with over the years, it's always been their driver has been really personal and it's been really, really strong. And for me, they're the people that I want to work with. They're the people because they have a real determination to do it. And it could be a whole manner of different things. It could be they need to prove to somebody that they're doing something. It could be they need to create a life for themselves. It could be that they've come from a fairly poor background and that actually they just don't want that for their own kids or whatever
Mhm.
it might be. But the people that have a really strong personal reason to succeed tend to be the people that succeed because
Mhm.
they're the people that will really put that effort and that drive and to get to where they've got to. And I totally agree with you. It rarely is it driven by I want to have 10 Porsches in the driveway and 15 Rolexes on my arm or whatever like that. It's rarely about that. Usually it's about a much more personal and much more uh important reason to them than just sort of material possessions. And I think that's so true. So this moves on to I want to move on to your podcast, right? So
Yeah.
um
Go on then.
you have come up with probably one of the best concepts of a podcast that I think I've ever heard of. Do you want to explain it on here?
Yeah.
Go on then.
So I had an idea a couple of years ago that there's lots of things that factor into it, but I wanted to help people. That going back to my passion. Once I realized what it was, helping people, and there's lots of little contributors to this, but essentially the podcast is called Two Amazing People. That's what it is. And going back to actually networking days, and anyone that networks will appreciate this. And you and I were in BNI, and I one of my frustrations was that the introductions or referrals, as they were called, they weren't game changers. They weren't life changing referrals. 99% of them not life changing referrals. It was a thank you because somebody spent £5 buying a bottle of aloe vera or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And that's what it, not always, but that's what it became a lot of. And so again, it was that thought of you're sat in this group of people, a community of people. And within those communities, you have the absolute rock stars, the nicest, amazing people
Mhm.
that you wanted to help and do more for, but not particularly in a position to do that. But I recognize also that people would do anything for these people. They would want to support them in any way they could. So that's, so those little moments start to sow a seed in my head. And it then comes back to, when you feed that into HMB and build the power of building relationships. And I'm a massive, massive, massive one, as I've said before, about the win-win scenario, and surrounding yourself with positive people. But have positive people in your life, you're going to lead a more positive life. Surround yourself with amazing people, you can lead a more amazing life. And when you didn't talk about the network of amazing people and tapping into that, and amazing people supporting amazing people's community supporting another amazing person's community or that amazing person, I had the idea that actually that could be really powerful. And so it's just trying to work out how to do it, the path of doing it. And you know this about me. I've never watched a podcast all the way through. I've seen snippets of it, like any human being has that's got a phone in their hand, but never a podcast all the way through. So how to structure
Apart
it and
apart
how
from
to
my
do it.
podcast, though, yeah. Apart from my podcast.
I've not actually opened them up, mate. I see it and I just skim past it. No, yeah. um, but the idea was essentially I wanted to create business for these people in a warm way, in a nice way, a genuine way, where people just want to help good people. And so trying to get the format correct and how it would work was really tricky. And then also, I think what was holding me back was the fact that I'd be well out of my comfort zone doing it, really out of my comfort zone doing it. And so that probably put a block on it for a while. And I've just decided that, especially with sale of HMB and starting up my new business, that it was one of my really important things that I wanted to do. So I did it. And the concept is really simple. I want to, with absolutely zero money behind it whatsoever. This is produced by me, filmed by me on a couple of tripods I bought on my iPhone and a second-hand camera, and me editing it in my garage as I'm sat here now. I wanted to see if I could, with this idea, start with zero and generate £100 million of business for amazing people just by going out and meeting amazing people. And so it starts with me, and because you're one of my two amazing people, I go out and see you, and I go out and see my other amazing person. So episode 1, episode 2, I shine the light on you, whether you feel uncomfortable about it or not, but
Yeah.
that's what happens. And I'd actively encourage everybody that is watching to support this amazing person. And when people see a genuine person in front of them that is also bloody good at what they do and knowledgeable and just comes across in a nice, human, positive way, I think that encourages others to want to help or work with them. And so that is the general principle. That it works, as we now call it, the tap tree, if you like, the tree of people and contacts. That at the end of yours and I chat, it was you're putting forward nominating your two amazing people. And because it's limited, this goes back to that, know, like, trust, and respect. Because it is limited to me just saying, of all the people I know, the two that I'm putting forward here and going and seeing are my top two most amazing people. Anyone watching that, there's a level of confidence and trust straight away. When you then go to your two amazing people who you've nominated, for me, straight away, even if they were complete strangers, they have the exact same level of, not, I don't know them yet, but trusting and respecting them straight away.
Mhm.
It's just transferred straight to them. And the liking bit comes obviously from the fact that I then go and meet them. And if you like them and you're there, then surely I'm going to like them as well. But you don't always know that.
Yeah.
But you go there, so I get to know them by doing the podcast and filming them and asking semi-personal questions. Anyone watching will also get to know them, so they can make that judgment to say, well, the trust and respect is there because of the level of the introduction, and now they're going to decide whether they're getting to know them through the podcast, and they can decide if they like them. And if they know, like, trust, and respect, then they're absolutely going to feel comfortable to introduce people from their community in and help this person. And so it works by then, as obviously it goes me to my two amazing people, then there'll be your two and your two and your two, and it just filters out into this massive tree, the tap tree, two amazing people tree, as we're calling it, of amazing, genuine people that I hope anyone watching will want to help. And I've made a commitment to myself, and whether this will be a few months or a few years, I've no idea, that I'm going to keep doing this until we've raised £100 million for these businesses. So that's my podcast.
It's an incredible concept. It really is. And when you think about, I know within back in the day when I first got involved with BNI, probably about 10 years ago now, they used to talk about the 6 degrees of separation was the you're only 6 degrees separated from everybody in the world. So where this takes you, knowing my downline in terms of the tree or my upline in terms of the tree, depending on which way around you're inverting the tree, um, I know I know potentially where that could lead you, and it's incredibly exciting, and it's going to lead you into having conversations with some very, very diverse individuals and people who are, you would never normally come across in your working life, and knowing in your daily life as well, and knowing some of the other amazing people that are going to filter into your tree. It's going to be an incredible journey for you. It's going to not only interesting, but I suppose inspiring in many ways. And I can't wait to see how it goes. I'm really excited about seeing where it goes. So
No, no, no.
nice
But
one.
as I've said to you, I've edited and watched the initial few episodes, and I've been, you know, I don't like watching myself talking on, on camera or anything like that. But I found myself absolutely engrossed in them, and the conversations that were had and laughing at bits that even I knew were coming up, but I still found them funny,
Yeah.
and I hope that comes across when people are watching it because they're having never watched, as I said, a podcast all the way through, and these are 35, 40 minutes long. I was engrossed in them,
Mm.
and I found it really, really interesting. So I hope that comes across because if it does, and it has that effect that we were talking about earlier, that people are also engrossed in this person that is a stranger to them for the most part, a stranger to them, and they get that sense at the end to say, "Well, I want to help this person. How can I help this person? Who can benefit from working with this person?" I mean, that's what I would talk about inspiring people. That's what I'd hope to inspire from them.
Yeah, absolutely. But this just brings me up to my one last question, really, before we wind this up. Um, so if you could give one piece of advice to somebody who's in business at the moment, and they've got a little bit of imposter syndrome going on at the minute, and things are a little bit overwhelming, or whatever it would be, and they look at somebody like yourself who's built a really, really successful business, and been very good in business, and they're just thinking, oh, I don't know if I need to hang my boots up or whatever. What is the one piece of advice that you would give that individual, um, that you think could help just see them through?
Those are bits of advice, mate. If people are feeling imposter syndrome, then that's good.
Mm.
I've learned over years that imposter syndrome is healthy. And it's healthy because if you're in a room where you have that imposter syndrome, you think, look at all these amazing, successful people, great, because that's where you're going to grow and that's where you're going to learn. And if you've walked into a room and you don't sense that, you're in the wrong room. So the imposter syndrome is exactly that. It also extends to if you're talking to a client and it's possibly for your biggest project, and you're thinking that imposter syndrome again. I hope I don't get found out. I hope I don't find out this is my biggest ever project. You're in the right room talking to the right client
Mhm.
because without that next biggest project, you're never going to grow. So if you're always putting yourself in that scenario, your business, whatever it may be, is always in a position where you're giving it the opportunity to grow. So it's uncomfortable being in those rooms, but when you become the thing about, isn't it, become comfortable being uncomfortable. I don't think you ever lose that sense of imposter syndrome, but that for me is just that little thing that clicks in my head to say I'm in the right place here.
Mhm.
And it doesn't force I then up your game, because you're listening and you're learning, you're just developing as a person. So if anyone's sent, and I think every business owner goes through imposter syndrome,
Yeah, I do.
really.
I do. I agree
Um,
with that.
and it's for me, it is exactly that. That's what it is. So seek out more rooms or more clients where you sense that and you feel that because that's going to help your business grow.
Yeah.
Um, what other bit do you want to
No, I
know?
love that. I reckon that's a really, really good place to stop, because It's just about shifting that mindset and turning that negative mindset of the imposter syndrome from, oh shit, to yeah, bring it on. And it's that shift of mindset and I'm doing the right thing. And I think that's a really, really powerful piece of advice, mate. So that's brilliant. Well,
The
Anthony,
other bit of advice, before you go, the other bit of advice, can I just say,
yeah,
is to work really bloody hard.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And whether again, this goes to business owners watching it, whether you know it or not, there's always extra gears that you can go up. And that's
mm,
not to say extra gears means doing more hours or putting more stress on yourself. Extra gears can be goes back to mindset, putting your head in a place where you are more productive. You've got greater clarity of thinking, and with that, you delegate away an awful lot more and you focus on what is really important for you to do. And so that takes that mindset bit, that takes a lot of work to be able to do, but it's also that mindset to say, do you know what? I can do more,
yeah,
because you can always do more. And so as a business owner, same thing for imposter syndrome. Go and find those rooms where you feel uncomfortable, but also know if you want to grow your business or develop it, there's always an extra gear you can go, and that's up there.
yeah. It's true. That's true. Mate, as always, it's been brilliant. I think that's been a really, really good podcast, and I just want to thank you very much for your time this afternoon, and I hope Sky managed to find a little plug for a tablet or whatever. But it
I mean, I was going to say, do you know what? Does this count as me watching my first podcast?
Well, you'll
Will
probably
it be
want to watch
part of
this back, so it may be actually.
it? I've already done it, haven't I?
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, mate. And there'll be some sort of like links after this where you can click on and you can find Anthony and find out a little bit more about him. I genuinely say if you want to connect with him, definitely connect with him on LinkedIn. He's a very good guy, and hopefully you'll have seen that on the course of this podcast. And I just want to thank you very much for your time today, buddy.